Hey, everybody.
Hey,
All right. Oh, so I see David, Heidi, and Scott. A couple folks from the past. Let's see. Hey, Courtney, Steve, Michael, Alan. There's Keith, Tim. Nice. Got a good group joining up. Anybody hear me okay?
yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll give it one more minute to see some other folks will join. So while we're doing that, I'm going to stop the share and pull up the notes that some of the questions people were asking. All right, well, it's 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, so why don't we go ahead and get started. As people come in and join, that's cool. Feel free to come in, join, leave as you need to. I am recording the session just for the folks that can't join that might want to go back and see where a question's been asked, how we might be able to help them out. So the intent of putting this together was that there seems to be lots of questions. We've done a couple of these in the past where people love getting and understanding the experience that somebody else has had on the Basecamp. So this doesn't necessarily mean it's something that I'm going to answer for you, although I may try to answer a couple of questions, but it's just for if you have a question and somebody in the group has an answer, then they can come in and jump in. If you want to talk about going camping in snow resorts, David's probably one of the good folks on the call to come in and to do that. Feel free to mute and unmute as you need to. The only reason I have to come in here about staying muted is occasionally we'll get stuff running in the backgrounds or something happens if there's any feedback, and that just prevents a little bit of that. But you don't have to stay muted the whole time. It's just trying to make sure there's not any issues. Feel free to ask questions. So if there's anything that you want to know, I will pull up a list of questions that people have asked up to this point, but anything's on the table that you want to go over and get help with. Feel free to participate. It works better if you do participate. And then the last I would ask everybody is to assume positive intent. So if somebody asks the question, they may not quite understand, I don't know, let's pick on electrical, and they're just trying to learn. So let's go through and assume that they're trying to get to the right point, or if they give you an answer you don't necessarily like, they were trying to be helpful. What I find in meetings is just that one assumption of people are really trying to be positive usually solves a lot of problems. So any questions before we get started? Okay. I'll pull up the list of, let me get it to come up. There we go. Of questions that people have been asking. We can go through this list as people want to, or if you want to start with just a general discussion and get the questions afterwards, what would you like to do?
Well, let's start at the top of the list, Wayne.
Okay. And this is for you guys. or for all of us actually to go through. So there was just a couple of comments. Can't remember who made this one. It might have been Tim or somebody else said, hey, just things general in maintenance. So I'll pose the question slightly different for the group. When you're doing maintenance on your base camp, what are some good things that you do that would be good for everybody else to know? And if you have a question about anything specific, feel free to come off mute and ask the question.
Well, this may answer the question I submitted about the hitch coupler. And I had the experience of mine not uncoupling. So before every trip, I lubricate the inside of it thoroughly with marine grease.
And so you've pulled up, you've parked, and then you come back in. And when you do that, it's like it's too tight. It won't come loose when you're trying to raise it back up or let it down.
Yeah, the lever will not lift.
Okay. I'll tell you what I do, and we'll see what others do. What I usually find is I'll take a look to see, it's usually in my case, the ball is too far forward on the hitch or too far back. And sometimes I'll just put my car in neutral and then put it back in park, and it moves my truck just enough. If I'm too far to the front, I may need to actually just slightly move back. I try to make sure obviously that the chocks on the wheels are in place. And most of the time that does it once. Occasionally I have to do it once or twice, just kind of back and forth, just to make sure. And either I have my wife, one of my kids, or somebody raise the hitch up as needed from that. Any other feedback on what you guys have seen?
So I find that if it won't unlock, like you said, the hitch ball is too far forward or back. But what I find is I usually describe it as there's tension on the hitch. So like if I come to a stop and I put it in park and then it rocks forward, like down like over a little ledge, or like down a little, like if I'm parked on a slope and I roll forward a little bit, it puts tension on that hitch and then the lock won't unlock. And I find that if you either give your truck a good push or your trailer a good push, just with body weight, it usually is enough to get it to uncouple, but it's almost always tension.
Yep, agree, Scott. Any other feedback?
When it happened to me, I tried the things that Wayne suggested, and I even took the chocks out from behind the wheels and put my truck in reverse and then pulled forward to try to resolve whatever was going on. And I think I have to refine that technique, everybody, because I was hooked up for the whole weekend, nothing unhitched.
Yeah, that's a pain, because then it makes it difficult to level.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's something that is sort of difficult, and it happened to me, and quite frankly, I was a little bit embarrassed because I didn't know if I was doing something incorrectly, and I actually called the manufacturer, and they pretty much suggested what Wayne is recommending. And it's always interesting whenever I get to wherever I'm going and I'll go back there, and the first time I pull it up, if it comes up immediately, it's going to be a good day.
Awesome. Well, the great part is you realize it's not just you. Then a bunch of us have gone through it as well.
Yeah, so I'm kind of lazy, and so the first thing I try is I'll just jack it up a little bit, pull it up, and then put it back down. And a lot of times just moving it up and down with the jacket, it actually creates enough release of that tension to open up. I mean, that's just if it's just a little bit. So that's, if you don't want to get back in your vehicle, you can always try that. That's what I usually try first.
Yeah, what I usually try first is when I have electric jack. So as I start to lift up the base camp, I start immediately trying to just gently pull up on the release. And usually it will just, it finds the sweet spot, and it just pops up. And then I usually just stop there, unhook the chains and everything before I lift further. That's usually what I do. Because a lot of times I notice it's stuck because I just haven't found that sweet spot right where, it's just because if you lift too high, you're actually now lifting, it's got tension on it because it's lifting the tow vehicle up.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's great, Eric. Now that you mention that, I do that sometimes as well. Right. I'll be sitting there. I've even told my daughter that when I've gotten in the truck to pull forward, I'm like, all right, go ahead. And when I do this, I have electric jack as well, raise the jack up and then be pulling on that lever to
Yep.
see if it comes loose.
And don't pull too hard, just pull like gently
Yeah.
on it until it pops up. Usually there's a sweet spot where it'll just pop right up.
Awesome. Great feedback.
Thank you.
For
Absolutely.
those of you that have electric jacks, how did you installing the jack is quite easy, I know that, but you got to bring power to it. So where did you go to get the power?
It's just wired to the batteries directly.
Yeah, I did the same, David. I just went literally underneath my propane tanks, took some zip
Yep.
ties to hold the electrical wire up, followed the
Yep.
7-pin wire back to the hole that comes up by the batteries, and went directly right up in that same hole. The one thing that I'm going to change and is because I do store mine in storage occasionally, and I think somebody has played with my hitch because I left the batteries and the solar running to charge, and I think somebody raised my hitch to the max because that's the way I found it when I showed up. So I'm gonna install a cutoff hidden underneath the frame that I can go and turn it off so that I can still leave the batteries on, have power to the lights, but not have the hitch on, and just reach under and switch it off. But I haven't.
Yeah, I remember seeing
Okay.
your post on that. That was strange.
Yeah.
And it could have been water that got into it, but
Yeah,
you never know.
I'm shorted it out maybe.
So I had mine installed by the Airstream dealer here in Portland, and they actually just tapped into the power and ground lines from the 7-way rather than running a new set of wires.
Oh,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you know which wires to tap into, that would be an easier path.
Yeah,
comes
I
off
mean,
your
and that
vehicle.
is a defined standard, so you can just look it up. Just remember to reverse it because they almost always give you the truck side.
That comes off your
feedback,
vehicle though, and the vehicle 7-pin wires aren't 10 gauge. Typically.
I mean, it's the same wire that runs directly to your battery. They just tap into that line that's already running to your battery.
Okay. Got it.
Not on the truck side, on the trailer side.
Yeah, got it. One thing I wanted to suggest on the trailer, I do a couple of things. I have a board that's about 3 feet long that I usually carry with me all the time. And I just use that board to nudge the trailer if I need to move it an inch, when I'm hitching it or unhitching it. And that has been very effective, and it's redwood, so it's not going to hurt any of the metal at all. So it'll dent the wood before it hurts anything. And the other thing is lubing. If your hitch is sticky, lubing it is going to help make all of this stuff easier, but it's also going to grab road grime. And so you have to clean out the hitch and make sure that there's not goop in there that will force it to get stuck. So it's always worth, if you don't want to touch it, you can take a bag and spray like a cleaner kind of lubricant like WD-40 up in there. But it's worth taking a paper towel and just making sure that the hitch area after it's been used for a while is clean.
Good idea.
Because grease will tend to keep dirt and makes a nice paste of goop.
Hmm.
And Jeff, for that reason, that's why I don't wear white shorts anymore when I'm hooking up and unhooking, because ask me how I know.
I'm wearing pants actually right now that has a ball stain.
See, Wayne, that's the difference between intelligence and wisdom.
There you go. One of these days I'll get to wisdom. Oh my goodness.
I have a question. What do y'all cover your electric jack with if it sits outside? Do you have something over the top during the weather?
I do. I bought a really fancy, nice form-fitting one that was custom made for my jack, and the first use, the zipper pulled off. So I returned it and got a really cheap one, and the cheap one works wonderfully.
I bought something from Lowe's that fits over plants outdoors. It's styrofoam. Will that be good enough?
you're just protecting it from rain and sun. So pretty much anything would. I got I don't know how to describe it. It's like a nylon covered foam. And I can put can hook the chains up underneath if I want, but I mostly just put the hitch, the connector and cover the electronics. So
I just was standing at the line at Lowe's one day and I said, oh, plant cover, because there's the kind that go
great.
over your, when it freezes, and just
Yeah,
stuff
that's perfect.
for the time being. But I was wondering what would be better, or is that just good enough?
It's never
Probably
even
good
occurred to
enough
me
as
to
long as you
cover up
don't
my,
drive with it.
it's never even occurred to me to cover up my electric jack. So that's a good idea.
Well, and I'm wondering if that's what caused mine to short circuit.
Yeah, I haven't covered mine, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, and so far it's been solid. I do make sure that the connections are packed in electrolytic grease occasionally, though, to make sure that it doesn't cause problems.
Where would you pack them? Where do you do that? Put that.
Where it's connected. So for me, it's like directly underneath the jack where the wire comes from the 7-pin or 7-way. But it's depends on how you have it installed. But any place that you have a connection, you can get a grease fitting for and just use an electrolytic grease. It's what they use in cars, like on headlights, because they're also exposed, just like your trailer. But
all right, so general maintenance looks like Andrea asked a question, said, speaking of sun protection, should you cover your tires at the campground? Is that necessary? What do you guys think?
I do it. I have tire covers on mine. I've read some pretty interesting articles in the RV Geeks blog about the damage that UV can do to the rubber of your tires. If you think about what happens in Arizona, and folks down there go to great lengths to protect things from sun damage, I would imagine that the same type of damage is happening to our tires. Even those of us up here in Minnesota,
Yeah.
I think it's a worthwhile investment, and I have them on mine.
But do you put them on your cars? I mean, the car tires are, at least on my base camp, the tires on my base camp and the tires on my truck are same grade of tire. And I don't worry about it, but that's me.
Do y'all worry about, like, we're picking up ours soon and we can't get an indoor storage facility? And so it's going to be like outside in Colorado. Do y'all, I mean, I know this is a tire question, but do y'all worry about covering the whole thing up?
Don't. It'll scratch.
Yeah, Airstream
But is it okay if I can't have it
recommends
like
not covering it.
under, is it okay for it to just be out in the open, like without a cover? Because like not a cover like on it, but like a awning or something, because I have no way to keep it inside.
Yeah, I generally wouldn't worry about it, especially if you've got solar panels. You wouldn't really want to cover those because they would scratch and they would degrade their efficiency, and you could even potentially rip one off when you try to pull the cover off. But I mean, they're designed to be outside.
Yeah, we live in the Midwest and a lot of snow and harsh winters here, and ours is uncovered all winter and never had any issues like that. So
I think the
Okay,
one
that's
thing,
comforting.
yeah, the one good thing you probably want to look at is to get on the roof and look at the seals once a year, just to look to see if there's any cracking for the ad seal. I think it's what they're using today. Used to use Cycloflex in the past. And if those are cracking, then you can go through and remove that, reseal it, just to make sure you're not going to get any leaks. But the aluminum itself, I'll be honest, my grandmother had an Airstream that she kept stationary at Ocean Lakes Campground in Myrtle Beach for 30 years and never had a leak in it. And I don't think she ever had anybody take it.
Wow.
But that doesn't mean the ones today won't have a leak. So yeah, you're probably in good shape on that end. But I do check my seals once a year.
Okay, that's great advice. Thank you.
I live in California, and as you know, we pretty much have sun all the time and rarely rain, but we have sunshades over ours. So my solar continually is charging, but it just takes off the direct sun for the times that we have to keep it parked instead of taking it out. But it's nothing that's touching it. It's above the trailer a good amount.
Cool. Thanks.
Can I ask another question that's been vexing me?
Yeah, go ahead, because I saw you had your hand up, Kevin. I was going down the line. It was you, and then Amy and Jared had a question.
Yeah. So the little light next to the dump area on your base camp, is it just me or does it drive everyone nuts?
I just disconnected mine because I never used it anyway. I just went in and just took the wires off and taped them up.
Okay, that I am at that point because it is.
Yeah, it drove me
looked
crazy.
it over. I've made sure that there's no loose connections. I've made sure that there's a drip loop on the wires. There's no water getting up in there. And I will tell you, sitting out in my driveway, nothing going on. I will turn it off. I will go out there tomorrow morning and it will be on. And it makes me crazy.
It's not just base camps. I've heard it's the ghost of Wally Byam.
Okay. Yeah, I could.
It's producing too much electricity with your solar, so it's helping out.
Thank you. That's actually probably the best ridiculous explanation I've heard so far.
Awesome.
Yeah, just disconnect it. It'll give you peace of mind.
Yeah, mine's done it a couple of times, but not much. But I'm along the lines that if it keeps doing it, I'll just disconnect, because if it's dark, I've got a headlamp on anyway for everything else I'm doing, and I don't worry about that.
I was about to say the same. I do the same thing. I put a headlamp on, so I literally have never used that light.
Well, it's probably the most used light on my trailer because it never stays off.
Maybe it'll burn out.
Awesome.
In 100 years, maybe.
So Amy and Jared, you had your hand up for a question.
Yeah, hi. We're 4 days into a 22-day trip, 2 weeks into owning our Basecamp 16X. We've already had 2 leaks.
Oh, wow.
We've repaired them, but we're just kind of wondering what people tend to carry with them. Our leaks were the seal at the back of the toilet, which other people have had issue with, and the valve, sorry, yeah, and the shower faucets cracking, because I don't think that they winterized it properly. We can't seem to get the shower faucets anywhere. They're back ordered or whatever. Yeah. But we were lucky and met some people who gave us a valve for the back of the toilet, but it kind of made us think, like, what else should we have on hand? Like, we don't want to have overkill, but at the same time, if you're on a long trip and you're not near an Airstream, or in our case you are, but they're booked until January, like what do people do? It's kind of 2 questions, I guess.
Yep. What do you guys think? What do you
Well,
carry?
I'm sorry. For plumbing issues, I would carry a way to cut pipe and shark bite caps. They'll get you at least disconnected and the leak stopped. And then I always carry zip ties, a piece of wire, and some real basic tools and tape. And that's what we go with.
Yeah, I carry electrical tape and dielectric grease.
Yeah, the shark bites actually saved us on this one. So
yeah,
those plugs. So we just cut it back where we can put new elbows on and just put the plugs on for that.
Yeah, and 20 minutes from leaving the place where we bought it, the clips on our propane tank blew off, which also seems to be a problem. I know I can't carry bolts and rivets for everything, but
I mean, the good news is usually all the things that are going to mess up like that usually happen in the first few weeks. So, yeah, I mean, when we first got ours, we camped locally for the first couple of months before we did our 9-week round country trip, and that was good because we had all kinds of issues too. We had leaking shower, we had some other and they were minor leaks, but they were still annoying, and we got them fixed at the dealer before we went on our big long trip.
I was just going to jump in about the shower thing. So we also had a problem with the mixer valve in our shower and it was leaking when we first got it. And in order to replace it, we got an outdoor RV shower, you know, one of the ones that has like the curly thing and the hand. And it's awesome. We love it. We use it. It's black. It's not, it's a little unsightly, but it wasn't that expensive and it works really well.
Way better.
And it doesn't leak.
Awesome.
Nice.
That's got a separate out, right? So the out's inside instead of back down and through. So you have to plug the shower, the original shower spot, right?
Yes.
Where the handle goes in.
I don't know what the question.
The shower hose that comes out the side, we don't use anymore.
Yeah. It's just one thing. So it's actually changed the way the shower works now. So there's not something that is underneath now.
Right.
It's all on top.
I
So
took
if it
that little
leaks,
piece of pipe out completely.
So when you winterize with that, do you just blow it out then to make sure there's nothing that's gonna...
No, we have to winterize fully because we live in Ontario, and it's really bad here for winter. We don't take any chances. It's full of our RV fluid.
like even the handle thing.
Yeah, even the curly hose.
Yeah.
Which we find really, really handy to have outdoor showers. It's so much better.
Or cleaning up stuff or whatever. It's just so much easier.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for that tip.
Yeah, and
We
I think
heard
for
that here, so that's
general,
helpful.
yeah, for general maintenance, one of the other items I carry beyond some of the basic tools is I do keep some sort of water sealant that you would use like in a bathroom or something else, just in case I either have a leak on the roof or the halo around the roof or around the windows or somewhere else, that I can quickly just seal it. It might be ugly. It's usually just a clear silicone, and then I can always take it back off and put something else on.
We did buy Flex Seal before we left, just because we knew it'd be hard to get like on the road.
Yeah, and I also carry Gorilla Tape.
We got that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is Gorilla Tape and some hose clamps, because you don't need any of the PEX fittings or anything, because you can do all that with a hose clamp and enough Gorilla Tape in an emergency. So you're going to be replacing it all when you get back to where somewhere where you'll have parts. So
Yeah, the shark bites are nice because with the disconnect tool, you can just kind of remove them. So if I did get the parts, I could just switch out the elbows instead of having it just blocked off and then reconnect it. But yeah, that's a good idea still.
Cool. All right. Any other questions or any other feedback to Amy and Jared on that? Okay, if not, we'll jump over. Patrice had her hand up. Do you have a question, Patrice?
I do. So I also experienced a leak, but it's the back door, which I hear is happens quite a bit. Some people say just make sure you close your door well, but my biggest question is, so seeing the fact that we're in Southern California and we don't get to travel a lot or very far when it's cold, we are going on a trip and we're going to be going into the Reno area where there's snow. And we will probably be boondocking more than anything. And I attempted to use our Truma for the first time, and we've had her for a year. So it was very interesting because although the heat came pouring out, I felt like there was also a gas smell. Has anybody else ever experienced that? And adjusting it was not easy. It just like it kicks on and it's just blasting heat.
Like a burnt smell.
Yeah, there was like a burnt smell.
Like plastic and stuff.
Like plastic. was
how old is your trailer?
It's a year old, but I've never used a Truma.
Yeah, I mean, most heating systems, when you first use them, they have a smell. So you might just have to,
Yeah.
Has it gone away after a while?
We've only tried it the one time because we're leaving next weekend. And
Before you
I thought, oh, maybe I
open
should try
the
this
door.
before we actually get on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
before you leave, open both doors and run the heater for an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same problem in my house. I built a new house and we had the same issue when we turned the HVAC on. It filled the whole house with a burnt smell. I just opened all the windows and doors. Luckily, it was the summertime, but we went ahead and left it on for like a whole day just to get rid of that smell.
Cool. All right.
It'll set off your smoke detector too.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all the coatings on the metal inside and everything.
Right.
It has to burn off. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's nice that it works great because, you know, we're not used to getting down into the teens at all. And where we're going is around 13 degrees and we're going to die.
Yeah, the Trimo will blast you out. You've got to be careful with that thing.
Yeah.
There
It's
is an adjustment to like
hot.
there's an offset you can set in there so that the actual temperature is closer to reality that you're, you know, the temperature you're setting. Because at least on ours, like, you know, if I set it on 55 degrees, that was really like 70. Right. So if I set on 70, we would be literally just roasting in there. So I think I did the offset maximum and it's close to reality, but still not exactly.
Okay.
That's close. Yeah.
Yeah,
Still,
I'm gonna mess with it a little bit more this week when I'm not at work. So we are not roasting and so we are not dying from that smell.
I bought a
Yeah,
little.
I use
I bought-
two temperatures on and off with the heater.
I bought an indoor outdoor thermometer, and I have the outdoor sensor out in the under the propane cover, and then another one on the inside. And I found that if I set the Truma on 55, it comes to about 64 in the trailer. So I just go from there. And I've thought about the offset, so now I'll play with that the next time I use it next month. So
That's a good idea. Oh, yeah. And then approximately how long does it run per tank? Because both our tanks are full right now.
it runs a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but I know last winter we used it quite a bit. And I mean, I was only, you know, going through a tank maybe every 2 weeks or so. I mean, I guess it depends on just how much you use it.
So yeah, it
But-
really depends on the outside temperature and what you have to
Yeah,
set
it does.
to. Because
Okay.
we were in the middle of a snowstorm in Oregon and we went through a tank in a weekend.
Yeah,
that
can happen. Yeah.
that was full and we had to get it refilled, but it was also snowpocalypse from an Oregonian's perspective and everybody wanted propane, so it was a hassle to get. But it really
That's
depends
like
on the
here.
outside air temperature.
Yeah, if it's gonna be like down in the teens at night and stuff, you're probably gonna burn through it pretty fast.
Okay.
I think most of the places we camped last winter, it was only getting down to the 20s at night. So, and then the
Only
day it was usually
20s.
usually in the day it was above freezing. So yeah, so we didn't use it that much. Yeah.
Got it. Thank
And
you.
then
very
if you
much.
get snowed on, it will actually go through propane less because the snow will insulate you.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah,
good to know. I
there's
did not know that.
definitely going to be snow from what we hear.
But
if you want
but
to,
if you get
Much
snowed on, you
appreciated.
also have to be aware if you're not plugged in to make sure that your solar panels get brushed off.
Yeah.
Because if there's snow covering your solar panels, you're not going to be charged, you're not going to be able to get any solar charging.
That's another good reason to have outside or portable solar panels. It's a good idea.
Yes, I do have some portable solar panels, so that's excellent. Thank you so much, all of you.
and the one thing I was thinking about you, Patrice, is because my company has an office in San Diego. You guys have a different problem than a lot of the rest of us in that you get so much sun, your seals could dry out, right? Because one of my buddies was talking about how his windshield wipers dry rotted because he never used them. Something I never would have thought about, right? Because I'm changing mine on a regular basis.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, we have a couple of problems. So the drying out of the blades happen in all of our cars, and then also the oil deposit, because oil doesn't get kicked up because we don't get much rain. So when you do, you have tons of oil all over your car. In fact, that's what just happened the last couple of days. So we do. And with the sunshades, it's great because the sun comes through, but it's not giving, crazy amount of heat and, damage on them. So those work good.
Good.
Oh, last thing, you talked about the rear door leaking.
Yes.
One of the things I noticed on ours, we got ours in this summer, and the aluminum halo that's above the door. I noticed there's like a good 1/4 inch gap between the wall and that piece. So I took that whole entire piece off, cleaned it, and regooped it with what is it, Dicor, I think is what I used. And then filled that whole gap So it was, there's no areas where water can sit. So
Very
if
good.
ice gets in there, it's just going to crack that
Okay.
or pull it
Excellent.
away from the wall and make it leak.
Do you think like a silver flex seal would work fine in your view, or do you need like a different sealant for that one to do that?
I think silicon seal, that's what I was going to use initially, but what I was told is I think I want to say Dicor, one of the folks on here recommended it because it sticks to aluminum better than silicon seal.
Yeah, Jeff, that's Psychoflex 221.
Psychoflex, that's it. Thank you.
Psychoflex 221, because that gutter above the door, they as you said, it has that gap in between the gutter and the aluminum. And if you take that gutter off, it's held by like 8 screws. You'll see the factory did a terrible job because there's, as Jeff said, there's a gap in between there. And even worse, those screws are not, they didn't even put any sealant at all in there. They literally took like 8 screws and just screwed it in. And if you watch a heavy rain, you'll see water pouring off the top of your roof, streaming straight down. A lot of it's going to the gutter, but a lot of it's running between the gutter and that aluminum. And that water, I did a video a few months ago on the forum and put it on there where you could see it in action, the water just going right into it. But that is no doubt where between that and halo leaks, that's 90% of the leaks that people see coming in either from the back door or the black trim inside your camper. If you see like what looks like moisture coming off that black trim, it's usually a halo leak or the gutter, as Jeff is saying. Those are two. The gutter's easy to fix. The halo is one of those things where I think about as crazy as it sounds for an expensive Airstream, I would suggest about every quarter going around and checking that halo. I just did it today on a fluke. I was walking in my driveway and I'm like, looks like a crack. Got up on the ladder, sure enough. So I pulled up some Dicor and covered up the crack. But those halos, once they get a couple of years old, you'll get a crack every 16, 24 weeks, almost like clockwork. It's comical if you look at mine, the amount of cracks that are around there, but it is what it is.
Well, I'd like to throw in my 2 cents on this. I had the exact same problem. And I used Volchem. It's a gutter sealant. It's polyurethane base, and it's meant to take a lot of expansion contraction, bonds real well. You can get it at roofing supply places. And I got pretty good confidence. I wouldn't want to check anything that often, but something like that should go for years. And then on the back door, the real problem is just that it's off a vertical, and you just can't do that. I mean, if it's a vertical door, the leak problems would be a lot less. And it's, the aesthetics are nice and everything is nice, but when you put a door angled out like that, you better have everything right or you're going to get leaks. So. And also the silicone seal, silicone has its points. It stands up forever, but its adhesion can be a little lower than other things, than polyurethanes, like Dicor or the Volchem, Vulchem. But the bonding on silicone isn't always the best. And that can be good because you can put it on and get it back off. But some of the silicone I got at the Airstream dealer, and the stuff they use at the factory, it has much better bonding for whatever reason. It's like the silicone chemists got their act together and figured out how to make it really bond well. So that seems to be pretty good stuff too.
Cool. Well, thanks, Scott. Nice, Kyle. And yeah, as Kyle mentioned, he's done it and several other folks in the group. You'll go through quite often and see videos if you do search for these issues, where somebody probably has found a solution to those, and you can use any of these different solutions to come in and fix it. Unfortunately, it's there, but you've got those. All right, so it looks like Jennifer and Mark, then Brian, and then I'll jump over to the chat because there was a question on generators.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, well, we also had the leak in the back as well, same issue, and we used silicone to fix it, and we have not had an issue since. Oh, and then he's telling me in my ear, a rain chain he put on there so that the water is not always just pouring in the same, like, how does that work?
There's a little hole at the back of the heater rail. So I just hooked a stainless steel chain that directs the water directly into the gutter all the time. So it helped, but I think more than anything, the silicone packing that gutter with silicone at the back or whatever product you want to use helped immensely. Now it actually flows into the gutter and not behind it and into the window, like into the door seal and into the trailer. So that's basically all you have to do with that.
Cool.
So that was just that. And then the other question we had was around the propane connection at the front. So has anyone figured out how to use that without having to modify a regular barbecue? Or is it like just accepted fact, you must deregulate whatever, unless you're using, I've heard of Blackstone, which we just use a barbecue.
Just buy an adapter hose on Amazon with a quick connect on one end and standard threading on the other to accept that your barbecue takes. And it depends on if your barbecue takes standard size bottles or the small bottles as to which other end you need. But they make those hoses and they're super cheap and super effective. But they're explicitly low pressure propane hoses.
Oh.
And they will
So
usually
we don't have
say
to modify
for RV use. No, you don't have to modify your barbecue at all. You just get a hose that has the correct end on both ends. And then you're looking for a low pressure RV hose. Yeah, there you go. Eric looks like, I think Eric dropped one in the chat.
Yeah, I put the one I bought in the chat.
Oh.
Yeah, I did one similar for my Blackstone, right into the quick disconnect on the Basecamp, directly to the Blackstone, worked without an issue. Now, the Blackstone comes, using that as an example, comes with its own regulator. You don't want to use that because you have a regulator on your propane tanks.
Right.
And if you put another regulator that the Blackstone comes with, you have two regulators. You only need one. So just get the right hose and you should be good.
Yeah, I
And
just had to
just
take
make
off
sure
the,
that, oh yeah, sorry.
Oh no, okay. I was just saying, just took off the hose that came with it and replaced it with that one I put in the link. It was easy.
Yeah,
You just had
and
to make sure you seal it good.
Yeah, still the Teflon tape that you used for like a shower head. And it's just a quick wrench.
There's special gas tape that's yellow.
Yep.
So yes, regular tape will work, but you're better off using the gas tape.
Yes, and I would agree if it was a high pressure system, but it's a low pressure. So it's never something I've worried about. And I've got several relatives who are plumbers, and they're like, for a low pressure system, whatever you have handy will work. But if you smell anything, switch.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that question. Brian, looks like you're next.
How you doing, everybody? I purchased a Basecamp 16 about a couple months ago. I put this in the chat. Yeah, I had a leak, and my question is right to the point, because there's all theories about the leak, and I have an appointment with Colonial Airstream in January. So I just was wondering, does anybody know if that black, what seems to be fiberglass area around the rear door maybe needs would be replaced, or is that something that Airstream would replace? Has anybody gone through some major repair, like repairing the fiberglass, or is there some other way to repair the fiberglass? In my discovery of looking for where the leak was coming, I found out the fiberglass was cracked and a big chunk was missing by the latch, the upper latch. So kind of concerned it's going to be a costly repair.
So has anybody with a 16 run into that?
If not, I get it. I just wait for my appointment, but I just thought I'd throw it out there if anybody had any ideas. So we could just move on if nobody has any.
Yeah, so I don't hear anything, Brian. I know on the 20 that I've got, I haven't looked at that fiberglass piece, but in all the instances, like we're talking a while ago, when most of the folks have had water coming in around the door, it has been around that channel up above, or the door wasn't sealing well, and that being cracked could potentially, I guess, keep the door from sealing, because I think that's where the latch comes in, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely have them take a look at it. I haven't worked with Colonial. I see lots of good, I think that's who you said you were in here with yours. I've seen good and bad coming out of those folks. Patrick's made a name for himself on his YouTube videos, obviously, right? I talked to him before I bought mine, but he wouldn't come down as far as I was wanting to.
Right.
Yeah, I would have them just check it and see, but hopefully if you've got the channel, water channel above sealed, and then it's closing on the door, you shouldn't have any more problems, but don't know what it would cost to get it fixed.
All right. Yeah. I just thought maybe because I know Airstream's notorious for having like big repairs be expensive. So I just thought I'm a little bit anxious as you guys can imagine, but you know, buying something with a leak a bummer. But anyway, thank you for help and appreciate the Zoom.
Oh, a pleasure. All right, Susan, you had a question?
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for having the Zoom meeting. I live in my 16 full time. I was told by the dealer, I have a question about the master disconnect. I was told that I would not have to keep that on unless I am on the road and I wish to continue to cool my refrigerator with gas. And then I read though on the thread that people say to leave it on all the time. I'm connected to electrical 100% of the time. So the only time I use my gas is for the stovetop. So again, my question is about the master disconnect, whether I need to leave that on or if there's any harm in leaving it on. Or what would be the purpose of leaving it on?
And so you're talking about the master disconnect for the power, or are you talking about something for your gas?
Well, I was told, it's my understanding that it's not required if I'm using electrical power, if I'm using shore power. The only time, the dealer said the only time you'd want to turn it on is if you go on the road and want to turn on your gas to cool your refrigerator contents. Keep your refrigerator going.
So anybody out of 16 have looked at the electrical wiring? I can tell you what happens in the 20, which is probably very similar, but I'll let somebody who has 16 to answer.
It's the master disconnect switch, master connection down by the tank heaters.
Wayne, I would suggest, Susan, there's really not a need to turn it off ever at all. Unfortunately, a lot of the dealers wing answers and they tell customers things that they don't even fully understand themselves. There's smart ones out there, but there's a lot of things I hear from a dealer where I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense. On a master disconnect, the only time you really ever need to shut that off is if you're doing long-term storage. If you are commuting or you're, on location somewhere or traveling in between locations, there's no need really ever to shut that disconnect off. If you're putting into storage and you're going to keep it there for 3-4 months at a time, then I would suggest shutting it off. But outside of that, I've had mine for 3 years. I don't think I've ever turned it off other than to test it. There's really no need to do it unless you're doing long-term storage.
Yeah, same here. We leave us on all the time. Even if I just store it for a week or two, I'll just leave it on.
Yeah.
Especially if it's out and the solar panels are getting sun, then yeah, it's no problem.
And Susan, I assume that your 16 is very similar to my 20. When I redid my battery bank, I rewired and chased all the electrical wiring. So think of it this way, the shore power, which you say you're staying connected to all the time, comes into the Basecamp and goes to your electrical panel. Inside of your electrical panel are your AC switch, breaker switches and your DC fuses, right, to handle the power coming in from any of those. Mm-hmm. From that panel, there is a wire that goes through that master disconnect switch, then goes over to the batteries. And so what you're doing when you turn that off is you're stopping power from going from the shore power over to the batteries. And so when you're traveling, I think what they were trying to tell you was that you're not connected to shore power, so you have no external power coming in. If you want to run your lights or you want to run something else, turn it on, right? And then you've got power coming to everything. If you don't need anything to run, in the Basecamp 20, there's some of us are pulling fuses on the water heater because it'll go into freeze protection mode. And so you can hit that disconnect and it kills all power going over to it, or you can pull the fuse. I leave mine on all the time, just because when I go into it, I can turn on the lights and do anything else when I'm not connected to shore power. So I think that's the only time that you need to worry about it. If you do have batteries in solar, then the solar will charge your batteries even with that disconnect turned on, because the solar panels go directly to a converter into the battery, and it will keep the battery topped off or charged. But if you need power from the battery to run your lights when you're not connected to shore power, you need to turn it on so that you can get battery power out to your DC appliances, your lights, your furnace, the other things. So as I agree with the guy, Kyle and Eric, as they were coming in saying that you can just leave it on.
Okay.
So I think I don't think it's going to hurt anything to leave it on. The storage part is probably the best part of turning it off, so that you're not having some phantom appliance that's pulling a little bit, like the propane detector. It's constantly putting power that would draw your batteries down, but you'd probably need 6 months of that draw before it would really do a lot of pulling to cause a problem.
Yeah, I'd be more worried about AGM batteries too, but still, yeah, it would take a long time to run it down, I would think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. Jonathan.
Oh, can I add something to that? Okay, so do you have AGMs or lithium, Susan? Because so I have aging, I will call them aging AGMs because I have a 2018 and I still have AGM batteries. So whenever I store mine, I always put the disconnect on, even though I have solar, just to make sure that I don't have anything drawing power off of those batteries when I'm not using it. But if you're living full time in it, then it's not an issue because you're not storing it.
Right.
So it's just something I do if I'm going to store it for any length of time.
All right. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and that's a good point. If you turn it off while you're on shore power, if you don't have solar, which some base camps don't, you can't charge your batteries. You have to leave it on for the power to go from your shore power to your electrical panel over to the batteries just to charge.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right.
Yeah. So do you have solar panels or not?
The factory solar panels, the ones on the, it's a 2022. So.
All right. So you're good in that instance that if you have some sun, you're going to get some power coming in the batteries to keep them topped off. But if you turn it on where the batteries are, your shore power will keep your batteries charged as well.
Well, I'm in Michigan, so we don't have much sun, very little sun. So that's very good. I'm glad that I brought that up. Thank you.
Great question. All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, and just to add, the electrical systems are confusing, so don't feel bad.
I'm learning.
So just had a comment to Brian about his latch in the back door. We had the same problem. There was leakage, and the latch, what it did is it ripped out literally because it's kind of like a fiberglass. So what I brought back to Airstream, and what they did is they literally put a whole metal plate behind the upper and the lower latches, because if not, like anybody's got the experience of, you can just kind of try to open that door and it'll just open very easily until you get that two metal plates that control the latch, so it locks in correctly, which by default what happens is it'll control the leakage as well, because we noticed that we were getting leaking like everybody else. So once they corrected that and they put a metal plate upper and lower, no issues at all, and it's pretty solid. So you might want to notice that on your back door. If you want to take off that black panel and have a look behind, and it's really a simple mechanism. So if you have a look, you'll see that the screws are only in fiberglass. So anybody who knows about fiberglass knows that you can just pull it and poof, it'll pop right out. So I do suggest to anybody to get a metal plate in there, and it'll control a lot. So that's Brian just wanted to bring that up. So that's what we did on our side. Just it works well.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jonathan.
Yep.
All right. Don't see any more hands raised. So there was a question. I'm trying to go back to the chat as I'm moderating here. There's a question on generators, and I think it was related to the open ground on the generators. And it started off, can you use the Honda EU 2200 to run the air conditioner? And is that going to be enough? And I know we have multiple folks in here that are doing this and can talk about the generators. Short version is yes, but don't try to run a hairdryer at the same time. And then with the open ground, really usually is only a problem if you're trying to use also a surge protector, because the surge protectors will see the open ground and try not to allow power through, but there's a bypass around that as well. Other feedback from the group on generators? Or if you've read anything in the chat, I haven't read it all going through.
I put in a soft start on ours on the AC, but I also have a handy 3000, and I love the 3000 just because I don't have to worry about any of it, and it'll run the air conditioner without any issue.
Cool.
Yeah, I have the Champion 2500 with soft start, and it runs well. And just as a little hack, if you are using a surge suppressor to fool the system so that it will work, of course, there is a little plug that you can buy to plug into one of the, I guess it's into the 520 R2 outlet or whatever. But in an emergency, you can take the little circuit tester that they provided with the Basecamp, and you can plug that in and it'll work also.
Cool, thanks, David. Yeah, I didn't think about the little one that they give you with it, but I've got the little adapter that you can get bypass that.
Yeah, yes, a couple of bucks, and it's solid rubber, and you just plug it in, and it works well.
Yeah. And then I'll admit, along the same questions, I originally bought a Honda 3000 to make sure that I could run everything easily, but all I have is an SUV, and the challenge getting it in my Tahoe was I had to get ramps when it was full of gas to push it into the back of the Tahoe. And it's so much easier to pick up the 2200, pull it out, set it on the ground and go. It doesn't hold as much gas, so I need to refill the gas a little more often, but it's a great little unit.
So
yeah, the handy unit that I have has wheels built into it and a handle, and it's designed for rolling around, but it doesn't have electric start like yours does. So that's why it makes it quite a bit lighter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because you have that battery in there for the electric start, which adds to the weight, correct?
All right, so going through the chat.
I have a question about that generator, and I couldn't find my hand to raise.
Go ahead, Sherry.
So it's sitting in the garage. I bought some gasoline and oil. I'm scared of it because every time I read the handbook, it says it may blow up on me. I've never had a generator. So do I just put the oil and the gas in it and just, it'll be okay, or what? You know?
Yes. Which version do you have?
But you know, huh?
Which version do you have?
The 2200i.
Okay, so I've got, put the oil in it, put the gas in it. Remember on the gas lid on the top of the generator, there's an open and close valve. Don't forget that. I went to do maintenance on mine the other day and totally forgot about that little valve to open it up. And I kept pulling and pulling and pulling, get it cranking, it ever would crank. And I finally realized, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I turned that little valve to let air come in through the gas tank, cranked on the first time after that. Just make sure, take it out of your garage, out into your driveway, Sherry. If you've got the oil in it, put the gas in it, crank it in 1 or 2 cranks, it should go. Put a load on it, even if it's just a fan or something else, pulling power. Don't let the generator just run with no load at all for a long period of time. Then you can hook it up to your Basecamp if you want to, but now your car has a chance of blowing up. Your generator has a chance of blowing up. Your hot water heater in your house, if you got gas like I do, could blow up. They're going to put those labels on them. It's not something to be played with because it's electrical, but you should be good.
Okay. I mean, I just kind of set it aside because I didn't need it, just yet. So I was just freaking out.
Disclaimer. Yeah.
Huh?
Excuse me. That's the usual disclaimer they put on everything. Be careful. You could, blow up the entire state of North Carolina if you're not careful.
That wouldn't be bad. I don't care if they blow up North Carolina.
Just leave
if you smell a lot of gas or it smells, something's not right, then stop.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's going to work just fine.
I have a neighbor. I may go get David to come help me with it the first time. So that was my thought too.
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised how easy it is once you start using it. Keep giving it gas, change the oil on the regular maintenance routine. You should be good to go. It'll last you a long time.
He kept talking about something and I can't remember what it was. David kept talking about like it had to have something to be able to work. Is that what the I is, the inverter or the something else?
No, I'd have to go look at the specs, and if somebody else remembers, the I is a particular model, and it allows you to tandem multiple generators together, so you can get another Honda 22 connected to it, run both of them at the same time. But it'll run perfectly fine as is.
Okay, so I don't need anything else with it to just plug things into it. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
like I said,
Thank
get
you.
something small like a fan or something you want to just plug in to test it. You should be good to go.
Okay, thank you.
And on first use, be cautious about plugging power strips and other things in. It's always best to plug directly into the generator itself.
Okay, I have like a fan in the garage. I can just pull out and plug into.
Perfect.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. All right, Marge, you had a question?
I forgot what it was.
That's all right. We'll come back to you. So there was a question about ACs freezing. So Kevin, like you had mentioned this, and there was some feedback in here from Heidi and Scott. Did you get your question answered about the AC freezing up? Or is anybody running into the issue with the air conditioner freezing up?
Mine freezes.
Yeah, so I think when you get in a high humidity area, like Sherry and I both live in South Carolina, and if you're running it wide open on high, it will sometimes freeze. And I found just turning the temperature down where it's not on max cold, that usually stops it from freezing.
Yeah.
Cleaning out those little foamy filter things often.
Yeah.
So they're not there.
Isn't there a
The other
freeze
thing,
sensor,
just running the fan, just run the fan, and that'll help unfreeze it also. Yeah.
Yeah, if you do freeze it, turn it just on fan, let it run for a couple of minutes.
Right.
It'll let the coils warm up. You can turn it back on, but unfortunately, you're in Florida in 100-degree weather, it starts getting a bit warm with the humidity. And so you want to turn it on max high, and that's when it will sometimes freeze up for me.
Yeah. I remembered my question.
Okay, go ahead, Marge.
Okay. When I look out my door, when I have the door shut, and this is the side door, there's a gap down there in my weather stripping. Is that something I need to replace? It looks like it's like someone just broke a piece out of it. So that weather stripping at the bottom of the door doesn't go all the way across. And in fact, if it's daylight outside, you can see daylight down there. Is that something I need to worry about, like for mice?
I've seen some mice get in some really tiny areas.
Okay.
So, yeah, but you could go to Lowe's and
That's
buy
what I
a
thought.
small piece and cut just a small one, stick it on there. You should be
Okay.
good.
All right. Okay, that was my question.
I would think for water and other, gas or other issues, you want some gap, some small gap for safety or for moisture or water to be able to flow out. If it's at the very bottom, right in the middle, if it's anywhere else, then
No, it's not in the middle. It's all the way over to the right-hand side. And so you've
Okay.
got that metal strip at the bottom of the, your door. And so nothing's going to flow out that side, because I've tried to sweep out that and you can't do it.
Sounds like it just broke off somehow.
I think so too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're good. And there was another question on the generator. I think it was Robert, can you run the AC on the Honda 2200 without a soft start? And the answer is yes. But if I'm going to run the hair dryer, okay, I don't, my wife does. I turn the air conditioner off, run the hair dryer, then I turn the air conditioner back on. with my Honda 3000, I could run both the hair dryer and the air conditioner without a problem, but not at the same time with the 2200. All right. Any other questions before I go back to the list?
Just a quick comment on the generator. My Champion is dual fuel, and as most of you probably know, on propane you get a little less power, but it will still, and I do have soft start, but it will still run the air conditioning even on propane, at least at the elevation that I'm at also. So if you're traveling and you're in the mountains and you're in high elevation, you're going to have to derate your generator.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dan. All right, so let me pull if there's any other questions before I pull the list back up to kind of walk through what was there.
I think Sherry has a question.
Yeah, I haven't figured out where the hand is yet. I'm sorry. I only teach school, I don't know all this stuff. So I'm going on a trip this summer, and I'm probably going to downsize the trip from what I planned this week, but it was like 7,500 miles. When you're going out on that large of a trip, do you have to have some time in there to do maintenance for things that I don't know about during a trip? So anybody that's done those long trips, is there any like general maintenance that you need to do while you're out? Not before you go, but while you're out.
So I'll start, Sherry. The few things that I do are going to be like, I do use a weight distribution hitch. So I check the torque on the bolts for my weight distribution hitch. I actually check the ball on my hitch on the back of the car. I did not do that and accidentally bumped into the ball on my hitch once and found that it was loose, right? Shouldn't have been, because I thought I had put Thor-like strength on it when I put it on, but obviously I didn't. I also check my lug nuts. Anytime if I've been traveling and I'm doing a bunch of traveling over a couple of days, I'll just go through and double check my lug nuts on the tires every couple of days. But any major maintenance, I haven't worried about anything beyond those.
Okay. Just that regular stuff that you do every time you break down camp.
Yeah. Anybody else do it differently?
Yeah, same thing I do. I check the lug nuts and check to make sure that hitch and everything is all good. And
tire pressure,
tire pressure, check tire pressure. Yeah.
Yep.
And have a tire pressure monitor in the car too, in the tow vehicle.
Yeah.
I've got a pump too to go pump it up. So.
Yeah,
okay.
That's good.
So Sherry, I would say it depends also on how many miles you have on the trailer before you leave. So like, I think they recommend, repack the bearings at what, 10,000 miles, something like that. So, a 7,500 mile trip, you're fine if you're taking a brand new base camp out. But if you've already got 5,000 miles on it, you may have to do that. I don't know. I'd be interested in some other thoughts about that.
I bet I've got 500 miles on it. And I've had like trips in it just locally around here.
Right.
So our first year at our base camp, I drove it 17,000 miles. And but yeah, didn't have any issues other than just some minor things. We had a couple things where like for instance, unexpected things can happen, right, on the long trips, just like it can for anything. But we did have the lights that light up the license plate just stopped working. I figured it out. It took me a while to figure out what was wrong, but basically there's like because the way the electrical gets into the back door, there's two little contact plates and a little kind of studs that stick out and make contact with it. It wasn't making good contact. So I just used aluminum foil and electrical tape at a rest stop to fix it. And then it worked for another like 6 months until I got it to the dealer and they fixed it for me. But yeah, so just little things like that can happen. But I mean, just random stuff.
Okay.
And it wasn't serious. It was just annoying.
Well, being by myself, I don't think the dogs are going to do much work,
Yeah.
Just
trying to be fine. I mean, that's the only issue we had was the lights of around the It was just lights that light up the license plate, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But I mean, I guess it might have been gotten pulled over or something. I just happened to notice it.
Excellent.
Thank y'all.
Yep. Good question, Sherry. Tim, how about you, bud?
Yeah, I was curious if anybody's had any issues with your tank sensors reading inaccurately. We just picked up a 2023 20X about a month ago and took a maiden trip down to Florida for 10 days. And the last day we were there, I needed to winterize the trailer before we headed back to the Midwest. So I went ahead and did that, and got everything done. And other than a little bit of antifreeze in the tank, my gray tank was still reading like 30-some%. And I thought, well, maybe it just needs to settle a little bit. So we drove for a little ways and hit a rest stop or something and got back there and checked it again. And it's still been reading 30-some%. So I hooked up again and tried to empty tanks just to make sure I hadn't somehow left fluid in there. And it's still been reading 30-some%. So I'm sure the tank is empty. So I was curious if anybody's had any issues with your tank sensors not reading accurately.
And I'll be maybe a little flippant. I'd say there's probably not anybody who hasn't had problems with it.
Yeah, I was about to say. It's mostly more my freshwater. I notice it. Like I'll use freshwater sometimes for, I know I've used a couple of gallons and it still says 100%. And then all of a sudden it will drop really quickly. And then when it says 25%, I'm basically out of water. So I've kind of gotten used to it now, but it is annoying. So yeah,
it's not just Airstreams. I've watched a bunch of the other channels where the folks, they all complain about it, whether it's a Grand Design, one of the others.
I mean, they're all using the same, they're all probably using sea levels. So, I mean, that makes sense that they would all have the same problem.
We had a 23-foot flying cloud prior to this and never seemed to really notice it being that far off. So I was just a little curious and wasn't sure if they got the sensor misplaced on the tank or something, or if I should just get used to it and not worry about it.
I don't know.
Well, I would say that one of the main problems with the Basecamp on the freshwater tank is that, it depends on what year you have, but originally they said it was 27 gallons. But the way it was designed, you could not get the last 4 gallons out. And in other words, so now if you look at the specs for the new ones, probably the 2023s, whatever, they say it's 23 gallons. So that bothered me from the standpoint that I didn't want to have 4 gallons of water in my tank just sitting there over a long period of time that could become, bad water or whatever. And so I tried to empty the tanks through the valves in the bottom, and those things, oh my gosh, it could take a year for those things to drain your tank. It's amazing. And I actually, when I took it into the Airstream dealer, I asked them to check to see if maybe there was something that was clogging it up, and they said no. I don't know if anybody else has had that same situation. But when you open those valves underneath there, the water just barely trickles out. And I think, Wayne, you may, in one of your winterizing videos, I think you may have suggested to tilt the Basecamp, get it up on your leveling blocks or something like that so that you can maybe get more of it out. But I think it's an issue.
Yeah. Matt Starr, early on, about 2 years ago, so I posted a video of how he fixed in his camp, how he pulled the tank off and redid everything to get rid of the problem where there was not enough water draining out.
Right.
I think he was the first one that recommended to take and just pull the opposite side, the door side, or was it roadside, passenger side, up high enough so that the water drains out. Even then it doesn't get it all out, because your drain's about an inch above the bottom of the tank.
Yeah. Does yours drain very slowly?
After a while, yeah. So initially it comes out pretty good, but once it gets down toward the bottom, it's a very slow drain. It takes about an hour and a half for it to drain out.
Yeah.
I usually do when I'm driving. I usually when I'm driving down the road. I just when I on the way home, I'll just open up the tank drains on the bottom and just drive, and then it'll jostle around and it gets out
That's a
faster.
great idea. Yeah.
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 People probably
So
behind me
Wayne,
probably think I'm crazy. See water leaking out of it.
Yeah. I used your video where you sanitize the freshwater tank. So I've done that just to make sure that the water that's in there, because if you're not boondocking and you have any water in there and you're using shore water, you're going to have some water sitting there for a long period of time, and that kind of bothers me. Yeah.
Awesome. Robert, do you have a question?
Yeah, I winterized my 2016 and put it 2022, 2016 or 16X in storage, and I'm concerned about the water being left in the freshwater tank. Is that going to freeze?
So the feedback, I'd asked that question to one of the guys at Airstream, and his answer back to me was every Airstream has had the same amount, a little bit of water in their tanks for the past 50 years. And he said, don't worry about it. What I try to do, as David was talking about, I try to maximize getting as much of the water out as I can when I'm going through the winterization process and draining the freshwater tank, making sure everything's out of the gray and the black. But there is a potential that, when it freezes, it pushes against the side of the tanks and over time could cause some problems. But when I talked to the guy at Airstream, he said not to worry about it. And this was at Airstream at Jackson Center, not the local dealer.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. What other questions we have? All right, so I'll pull up the PowerPoint. I don't know if we have the folks on that had asked the original questions, but we'll use those to kind of go through some of these. So we've talked a little bit about leak mitigation. I think the next one was solar upgrades, AGM to lithium, panel install, inverter install. Anybody have any questions on these? Because I think we have a couple of folks on the call that have done this.
I have a question. I bought mine without the factory because I wanted to do my own, and then of course, haven't done it yet, and just went without the first time around. I guess a couple of questions. One is, I noticed that Airstream for the new ones have gone to a Merlin flexible panel. Does anybody have, I know in the past the flexibles have been kind of iffy about longevity. Does anybody have any knowledge about the new ones that they're using, the Merlins, and whether they are worth kind of the less weight or not? I know maybe it's just a personal opinion. And then also, Wayne, in particular, I know you did the server style lithium batteries. I'd love to hear your experience now that you've had them for a while versus going with a more traditional style. I know they even make 24 volt, or at least there are a few of them out there in a sealed kind of traditional battery style. I know they're probably a little bit bigger in other ways, but if you don't need to max out the amount of power like you did with the server style, do you have any thoughts on that and longevity as far as vibration and going down the road and that kind of thing? So those were my two questions.
So we'll start with number one, the flexible flat panels. Anybody have any experience with those? I can tell you what I've read, but I don't have any experience with them.
I've got a little bit of experience. Flexible panels it's some type of plastic, and the rigid panels are glass, and glass will hold up indefinitely. And I don't care what you add to the plastic, it's not going to be the same. Obviously, Airstream went with the best panels, best plastic they could for the new 2023, but it's never going to be glass. So
I think that's the biggest difference, is the longevity of the panel, and the plastic will expand and contract more, which will age it faster.
Yeah, our 2023 came with those Merlin flexible panels as well, and all my research and talking to the dealer, and they may just be regurgitating things, but they say that Merlin makes the best flexible panels on the planet, and they use some special chemical coating that's as good as glass, but who knows? So time will tell, I guess, longevity.
Yeah, what I had seen in the past, and this is in the past, not these newer ones, was that the plastic would glaze over, and so the power output would drop as the plastic glazed over. And I think some people would try to refinish that and kind of get the glazing off of it, and try different ways. But maybe the newer ones, the plastic is a different comparison. I just wonder, it's interesting. I'm trying to decide what's the best way to go, and I just had seen those, so thanks, appreciate that.
I haven't looked at the prices. Are they cheaper than the glass panels, or
No, they're like $600 for a 100-watt panel.
Yeah,
the Merlin flexibles are.
I like price. When you get longevity and low price together, it's pretty hard to beat.
I mean, the glass ones don't weigh that much more, really, but well, maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't done a side-by-side comparison, so I don't know.
The weight of the glass ones isn't enough to make it an issue.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I was thinking too.
As many watts as you can fit on there, it's not going to be enough weight to make a difference.
Yeah,
the glass is really thin. They've got that all worked out. It's high-strength glass.
Yeah, and then a little bit that I've researched that I've done, Keith, was and it was not that specific Merlin model, but it was other flexible panels, and they were saying the average lifespan was about 5 years. So, and that's another thing to consider. If you're going to keep your Basecamp for 3-4 years and sell it, you're in perfectly good shape. If you want to do like my grandmother and keep it 30 years,
yeah,
glass is going to be the better solution for you.
I know the Zant panels I just bought, the ones that are the portable ones, the portable briefcase ones, those are guaranteed 10 years for same power output. I don't know if they'll reach that or not, but that's what their guarantee is.
I forget the name of the big automotive RV solar panel supplier. It's not Victron. It's the popular one. They're on Amazon, $100 for a 100-watt panel, glass. I mean, you're not going to beat that.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at the specs on my panels just from a weight perspective. I'll get to it in a second. But
the other issue with flexible panels is their profile. So they're much shorter, and so wind resistance, and you might actually save that much in fuel.
How did they mount the new ones on the 2023s? They just gluing them down right to the roof, or is there a mounting system?
So those Merlin panels come with an adhesive backing that they literally just stick down, and then they put some kind of tape around the four edges just to give it a little additional adhering.
And then theoretically, if it goes bad, you can still pull it up. It's enough to stick it down, but it will come up 3 years down the road if you have to replace it.
That's a good question. Probably with some elbow grease.
Yeah.
You might have to use something to dissolve the adhesive, maybe.
Yeah. You just dissolve it.
Yeah, good feedback. And so Keith, to your question on mine for the larger 24 volt, for context for those who haven't seen or haven't been on our previous calls, Keith has been on some of the calls that we've had before. I went a 24 volt install primarily because number one, it was cheaper and it would give me more power at the same price. So I bought two EG4 Life Power, I think version 4 batteries that were 24 volt, 200 amp hours. That's the equivalent of 2 times 200 amp hours, 400 amp hours, so 24 volt, but at 12 volt, that's like 800 amp hours of 12 volt capacity. And the reason being is I bought those two batteries for about $3,000, about $1,500 a piece, versus if I had gone with 12 volt Battleborn batteries, and I use those because they're the better known and they're really good batteries, right? It would have cost me like $8,000. Now the price has come down since then. You probably could get them for $6,000. So, but still for half the cost, I got the 24 volt. So that's the reason I went that path. It did require me to add some extra equipment because I had to convert the 24 volt back to 12 volt to feed the 12 volt appliances. But that was a $70 device from Victron. And it was super simple to hook up coming off the bus bar. Up to this point, Keith, big part of the question. I haven't had any major issues. There have been some minor issues. The batteries seem to be holding well. I've got them secured down. The biggest issue that I've had has been if I go to do some maintenance or some work around them, I'd like to tinker a little bit too much. There's something in the main disconnect switch when I turn it off. It's like it gets back feed some voltage to the batteries and they want to shut off. They throw an error. So I just have to shut the batteries off and turn them back on, right? The worst issue that I've had, it was during a lightning storm, one camping event. I was away from the camper and I don't know if it was a surge, and I did have the shore power with a surge protector, which was showing fine, but that didn't mean there wasn't some sort of surge. I came back with no power in the camper. Now, keep in mind, when I rewired mine, my shore power no longer goes to the main electrical panel. My shore power goes to my Victron inverter. The inverter goes to the bus bar and then back over to the electrical panel. So that was the easiest way I knew to get it back over without trying to put an extra, some sort of split in between. And what I found was the multiplus had shut off. And so I had to go through a series, and now I'm thinking about it, I should have written it down. It'll probably bite me again. But I had to turn everything off. And when to turn things back on, I had to turn my multiplus to charge only, to ignore shore power, even though there was shore power, to get power back from the batteries. So I don't know if it was tied into the pre-charge resistor or something else on the multiplus. When I did that and then flipped it back to inverter, everything worked fine. As far as moving around, the batteries, the wiring, everything else, nothing there has been a problem. I'm slowly adding a couple of extra pieces here and there. I'm getting ready to add a temperature sensor into my Servo GX. And I've been doing testing and monitoring battery power to see how the solar is going. I've since gone to, and I think I posted the other day in both the Basecamp and the 20X group, I'm now up to 600 watts with 3 200-watt 24-volt panels. I did look up the specs, and the panels that I bought, talking about a comparison to the Merlin, my panels were 26.5 pounds a piece. So about 80 pounds for those 3 panels. I secured them. I did not drill into the aluminum. I went to AM Solar, bought their mounts that allow you to make it easy to move, stick down, and they have an adhesive that secures to the aluminum. And per mount, and there's 4 mounts, gives you 80 foot-pounds of support. And then I use Cycloflex 221 around the bases and up the base as well. And I'm gonna do a video on those at some point to give extra adhesive and to make sure water's not getting into where the mounts are connected to the trailer. So other than that, I mean, we went to Florida this summer. On the trip back, and I did this at a test at a gas station, pulled over, solar had charged, the batteries at 100%, stopped it like a Love's, went in, and slowly I went to turn the air conditioner to fan, and then I turned it to low cool, and then just sat there, and my wife and I had lunch inside the base camp with the air conditioner running. When I finished, we were down to 85% capacity because I have so many amp hours. It's 800 amp hours and right at 10,200 kilowatt hours. So,
Are these
no
batteries the
problem.
same? Did they fit in the same battery compartment as the original 12 volt batteries?
They did not. They're a little bit bigger, and it's
Okay.
100 pounds more than the original AGM batteries that I had. So I took the whole battery compartment out. There's a hole for the drain inside the battery compartment for lead acid batteries, even though they had AGM. And so inside the camper and under the camper, I put cut 2 aluminum squares and just screwed those down. Underneath, I sealed it and screwed it in so that the hole was covered up, so no water would come up in through that.
Oh yeah, I remember your post on that. Now that you're mentioning it, yeah, yeah, okay, that's cool.
So
Wayne,
overall, haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
So
Wayne,
when you're,
I was looking at the design of the system, and what I was considering was the SOK batteries, which would be about half the amp hours, but everything else would be identical.
And to Jeff's point, Keith, the other thing that I thought about is, number one, I went more for as much power as I could get at a lower price point. There have been great reviews on the EG4 batteries, which is one of the reasons I went with them. SOK was the other one I was looking at. Since then, they've come out with larger 24 volt batteries, SOK, a couple of the other brands. I think Battleborn has come out with their GC3s. If you want to go to 12 volt, you can still go down toward the 200 volt. The 200 amp for the 24 volt. If I had to do it again, one of my concerns long term, and I'm trying to get more and more into boondocking, obviously with the solar panels. I'm curious as to how much the vibration will or won't impact those EG4s over time, but only time's going to tell. But since they were half the price of buying, let's say, the Battleborns, I took the chance and figured if I had to go buy another set of batteries, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Did you do this mostly so you can get AC, or was there some other reasons why you went to 24 volt?
That 24 volt mainly just for the cost, right? I did want to, living in South Carolina, doing a lot of camping here, Florida. We've been going down to a couple of places in Florida in the summer lately. I have to have shore power to run the air conditioning. It's just too hot.
Yeah.
I mean, even in November, it was 80 degrees here. We're just now starting to where it's cooling down. And so it was more, I wanted to be able to go, let's say 7-10 days in the wintertime and go boondocking and not have to worry about power at all.
The conductor size for 12 volt, 3000 watts is pretty sizable. And so if you double the voltage, you make using much smaller conductors, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because they're really hard to route.
Yeah, it's a great point. If you look at explorers.life, and was it Nate that does the videos, he has some great calculators right on his website. And if you change it from 12 to 24 volt, you see a significant difference in the size of wire that you have to use, right? And so when I bought my initial diagram from him, it's $10 to buy one, right? And it was 12 volt. I went ahead and started buying like 4 alt cables coming from the inverter over to the battery. Well, in a 24 volt battery system, that's way, way overkill, right? I already had it, and it's more expensive, significantly more expensive, because it's a huge cable. So I went ahead and used it because I'd rather have extra capacity instead of trying to cut it close. And the way I look at the wiring, to Jeff's point, is that if his calculator tells me that I only need 12 gauge, I'm gonna put in 10 gauge. If it tells me I need 1 aught, I'm gonna put in 2 aught, right? And I'm gonna put in extra so that I'm not gonna run into heat or other challenges for fire in there, and I'll pay the little bit extra on that side.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's a really good wire gauge calculator on the internet. Is just search, something to do with that ampacity or amp capacity of different size wires. And it's a marine website. They've got a really good chart. And I've searched it a couple times, like 6 months apart, and the same chart came up. It's pretty easy to figure out. The whole, Wayne's installation is beautiful. And I think it really comes down to, the AC. And if you're going to have AC, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have a generator. If you're not going to have a generator, go all in, just follow Wayne's recipe. If you're not going to have a big load like AC, just get the AGM. It's proven, it's cheap, it works,
Yep, gives you everything you need. You're right, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, we've just been making sure that we don't absolutely need the air conditioner when we're boondocking, just by going to places that are not too hot when we're boondocking. But yeah, that would be nice to be able to run the air conditioning when boondocking.
Yeah,
I mean, but we can run we've spent 8 nights boondocking, and I mean, we ran out of, we have to dump our tanks and get water before we need to get electricity because we have plenty of panels and everything. So it's really, the only reason I would see going to 24 is just to be able to run air conditioning. That's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I'm really looking I have to work. And so I want to be able to run a normal computer monitor because I'm, blind. And also, I haven't done it yet. I was always, this last trip for 3 months, I was in places where I had coverage, but I probably will go to Starlink at some point. And so I want to be able to run those even if I'm off somewhere and work. And so that's really I'm trying to kind of figure out what's the best mix to do. I won't go probably as far as Wayne did, but I want to have some cushion so that I don't run out of work capacity. My follow-up, Wayne, was, did you have any thought about putting a cutoff when you're on shore power between shore power and your batteries? Just if you have solar and it's charging them, then do you really want to have that crossover? Or is it just too much to come up with another cutoff in there?
I thought about that, Keith, when I was looking at it, and that was part of my reference of going strictly from shore to the multi-plus inverter and then back over to the panel. I was looking at, well, what happens if my inverter's not working? Right now, I can't even charge my batteries unless there's solar coming in, which there is if I've got good power. Part of it was just the space, because the box, to put another box in there to have a connect, and whether it was a breaker switch or some sort of relay, was really just starting to eat up space. And so I hadn't. It's in the back of my mind that I may do that at some point, but that was the main reason that I didn't, is that if the multi-plus goes down, right, and it's going through, because I was thinking worst case, the multi-plus goes down, then I can't run the air conditioner and I'm just stuck if I'm camping in Florida, right? So I may do that at some point, but honestly, worst case, if the multi-plus goes down, I literally can run to Lowe's. I can buy some 10-3 wire. I can buy the box that I would need to have that and just run directly over to the breaker panel and just go straight into it and have it fixed in about 15 minutes.
So Keith, I mean, if you're talking about loads like, you know, computer monitor, Starlink, that's not really that much even run on AGMs. Personally, I would go AGM and see if it works. Just like copy the Basecamp, you know, what it comes with. You get the solar option, a couple batteries, a couple 100 watts up on the roof, a couple 100 watts of portable. And if that doesn't work for you, if you're cutting it too close, or you're working late in the night, you're getting low, you know, get one of those EcoFlow. I'm not a fan of those, but for what you're doing, it'd be a quick solution. You're just carrying a little backup, you know, in case your solar isn't quite doing it. Wayne's installation, it's a great installation, but I think it's, you know, it's kind of an all-in project. If you're up for it, good, but the standard installation is going to be pretty easy. Solar is kind of intimidating to people, but it's, for instance, on YouTube, look, Will Prowse, Prowse, he has a great channel. If you can wire a house, you know, 110 AC, solar in a lot of ways is easier than house wiring.
Yeah, it is.
DC is real forgiving. You just got to do a few things right. So, I mean, it's kind of like advice, but start with it. The loads you're talking about are not that huge. Start small. If not working for you, there's an easy way to upgrade, you know.
So no, I appreciate that. Thanks. So I just trying to decide whether I want to kind of I wouldn't go all in like Wayne, but maybe half the way in.
Yeah. So I spent almost 4 months on the road this year, and I only took, I think, 3 weeks off work. So I worked on the road like most of the time, and I can talk to you more about my setup. But yeah, I do have the Battleborn lithium-ion batteries. I have the 180 watt solar that came from the factory on the roof, and I do have two 100 watt ZAMP portable panels, which I think are really good to have for power. And I do have Starlink. I don't use Starlink all the time. Like if I have good, I have a PEP Wave with 2 SIM cards in it too. That takes a lot less power. So if I got a really good cellular connection on either AT&T or T-Mobile, it's the 2 SIM cards I have, then I'll just use that because it's lower power. And if I'm out somewhere where I can't get a good cellular connection, then I'll use the Starlink. But I do usually unplug it at night. You know, after I go to sleep, before I go to bed, I just unplug it so that it doesn't, you know, run the batteries down all night long. And I've yet to run out of electricity. I've not run out of electricity ever. So that's just been, I actually don't have an experience of running out of electricity. It just has not happened.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll reach out to you separately because I want to ask you.
Yeah, we can chat some more.
I stayed in parks this whole time, not the whole time, but most of it, and all the time I was working. So it wasn't an issue this first trip, but I don't want to do that forever. So
I had a great time working on the road personally. It was a lot of fun.
The continuum of solutions though, right? Because Wayne is able to power small countries with his, and
I could not
run. He's also looking at it like he's supplying 3,000 watts of inverted power, If you don't need that, you can put a 1000 watt inverter in.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be integrated into the system. You can with the at least 22 and later, you can just flip a switch and put a lithium cell in there, right? So you don't need, 5,000 watts, amp hours of batteries. You can put smaller, 100 or 200 amp hour of cells in there and be just fine and run a smaller inverter. You won't have the automation, all the other things that Wayne system has. But
I do have the 1000 watt inverter, and I was able to run like my Starlink and like a fan, for instance, like a regular house fan
that's cool.
off of that all day. But that's probably about it. Like, and I was kind of careful to like, if I was going to like, run like an appliance that pulls 500 watts or something, I usually unplug the other stuff. But that was very rare that I did that. Usually I didn't have to worry about it. Just kept the inverter on all day if I needed to run something on 120.
Yeah, and to Jeff's point, right? Thinking about, and I think what Eric was telling you, think about how you're going to use the system. I really wanted to be able to go off grid for long periods of time and not have to worry. I'm going to have to worry about water and waste before I have to worry about power. I've also recommended a couple of folks in the group in the past, when I've asked them, what are you going to be using the inverter for? And they're kind of like, well, I just need to power my iPad. Well, go to Amazon and order one of the small red 400 watt inverters that plug into the cigarette adapter. That's all you need. You don't need to configure anything else. But if you want to go a little bit larger, the simplest way, as you guys were saying, is buy a couple of the 12 volt lithium batteries, put them in, wire them in parallel. It's really easy. Use all the exact same stuff you've got today. You don't necessarily need the inverter. If you want to go to the inverter, add in the 1000 to 2000, but just know what you want to use. Honestly, it was a combination of long power, but I'll be honest, even when I'm boondocking, one of the main requirements for my wife is she has to be able to use the hairdryer, and I didn't want to lug the generator, although I bought a generator. So, you can either go to the far end like I have, or find what's comfortable for you in the middle. There's lots of cool things, and I love what you guys are doing, Eric, of coming back and helping somebody else say, hey, just get on the phone with me. I'll be glad to help you out. Because that's part of what I love about this group.
I love talking about it, so no problem.
I'd like to break in just real quick. This is John Chalice, and Nancy convinced me that we should get lithium batteries this fall, but I didn't want to go the whole hog on the expensive one. So we got the Lion Safaris, a pair of them on sale for just under $1,000, and they are really serving our needs beautifully. And I can, the thing's only 16 pounds each. They're so much easier if you have to get them out of your battery compartment. It's like day and night difference to work with them. It did involve with our 2018 going through some other, like the main power controller had to be replaced to go to lithium, but it wasn't that hard an install. I had already worked in that area before. So all I can say is so far so good, and we really love those lithiums. They come with a 10-year warranty. They haven't been around long enough to know if that's going to hold up, but it is an in-between solution that is a lot less expensive.
That's awesome, John. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so something I haven't really heard mentioned, if you have permanent mount panels on your trailer, you've got to park the trailer in the sun to get solar exposure. They're generally not going to be at an ideal angle of incidence to the solar radiation coming in. So you got that little issue. Plus your trailer's getting hot. So I like portable panels. I can park the trailer anywhere I want. I can put the panels out 100 feet away. So you definitely want some on the roof, but I wouldn't put all my bets there.
I absolutely agree. I was going to get more on the roof, and I got one of the portable panels and was instantly amazed at how much more I could generate off that power by just moving it as the sun moved and making sure it was pointing right at the sun. And then when I saw how much better that was, I just got another one of the portable panels instead of putting another one on the roof. The roof ones are nice for being able to charge while you're driving. Fantastic for that. Yeah.
The portables, I mean, you can put them out 8 or 9 in the morning and put them at about the right angle, and you're getting something. The ones on the roof, they're not going to really do much till 10:30.
And in the evening, you have that happens as well.
Yeah.
For the people that have portable panels, I'm sorry.
And the portals are just so quick and easy, and I mean, they give you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and I got the extra long cable and I just daisy chain them. That way I can keep, I can set them 30 feet from the trailer if I have to, which is nice because then I can keep the trailer in the shade when it's really hot. And then I can just, put the panels out wherever the sun is. So
Do you wire the charge controller in the base camp, or do you keep it external?
I just use a ZAMP port. So that's on the outside of the base camp. Just plugged it right into that. But they have to have their
There
own
specific
solar controller.
panels that go with the ZAMP port, or is that like a standard port within the solar like community, I guess?
It's pretty standard. I mean, you might have to get something to convert it, like if you have a different connector, but you can get those too. Those are, they're sold on a lot of solar sites, so
Okay.
you can find it. Yeah, and the big thing is the ZAMP port it's not hooked up to the charge controller. It's just wired directly to the batteries with a fuse in between. So you do need to have a solar charge controller on at least one on the portable panel. So one of my portable panels has the solar charge controller, and I just plug the other panel into that panel so that they're both using the same charge controller. You theoretically could wire them into the charge controller inside the base camp if you want to rewire it. As long as you just got to make sure your charge controller that you have can handle that load. Mine can actually, so I could do that, but I haven't done it. I already got the solar charge controller for the portable panel, so there's really no reason to mess with it.
Yeah, I have a friend got these portable panels. They're like, I think they're 8 feet long and they're 2 feet wide, but I've got like 6 of them. So I've been thinking of wiring a charge controller in the base camp so that I can just jack them as many or as few as I need.
It's a good idea. I mean, I have a friend who, he just wanted to go really cheap, and he bought like a whole ton of used solar panels, which he uses also for his house. I mean, he has them hooked up to charge batteries. I mean, he's kind of went on this whole solar project thing because he's got a giant piece of land. So he has them out on the land, and he has them on his RV. He has them all over the place, and he got really good deals by just looking for wholesale. People selling off, companies that were selling off a bunch of used panels and stuff, and got really good deals. So it's always an option too.
So I'm
takes
going to
more
just
work.
mention this again on the forum. It's been brought up, the ZAMP port. Personally, the whole ZAMP thing is a joke to me. It's like they put their name on it and they charge quadruple, and the whole polarity thing is such a mess. Just get a voltmeter and check everything that you're going plus to plus and minus to minus. Don't worry about ZAMP or not ZAMP. The non-ZAMPs will plug into the ZAMP, but check your polarity or you could really cook something. Have fuses where you're supposed to have them. No big deal.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, they're just wired right to the batteries, so it's just 12 volt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had this old extension cord, just a 12 gauge, for like running a power saw, 100 foot long, and that'll run easily 100 amps. You can go pretty far out. I mean, because sometimes you're in a well covered spot. So the whole wiring thing, there's a lot of choices you can make that are not expensive that will increase your options.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So any other questions we wanted to go through that somebody had hot burning, new at buying the base camp, or some cool stories you wanted to tell?
I have a cool story. It's not getting hot water.
That would be cool.
Have a suburban tankless water heater.
Yes, go figure. And so we had one of the situations where it was intermittent and then it stopped working. I reset, I turned the DC off, I pulled the fuse. It worked again after that once, but then I turned off the water and then I tested it again. I talked to the dealer about it. I brought it to the dealer. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. And of course it works fine whenever you touch it now. So we just happened to be out and about and not near the dealer when this happened. So I'm wondering if anybody had a better strategy for managing the suburban water heater, or anybody had some special magic other than percussive maintenance to fix it.
I'll comment just to share in the misery, I mentioned we just picked up our brand new base camp last month and took it down to Florida. And I'd read on the forums that that was a common problem. And sure enough, we got to the RV park and plugged in and went to take a shower that first day, and cold water. So I did all the troubleshooting, and I did learn that I think it's the third breaker down is your power converter. So you don't actually have to pull a fuse. You can just flip that breaker off, turn your battery disconnect off and then back on again, and then flip the breaker back on. And then it would work for us every single time. We'd get immediate hot water, and then you come back later in the day and it doesn't work again. And that's as far as we got with it. I haven't been able to figure it out, but at least it's an easy fix until somebody has a breakthrough, I guess.
Yeah, the only strategy I found that seems to be better, or that I think might be helping us get to a solution, is if you set the temperature to whatever you want the water to be and you only use hot.
Wow.
Because then you're pulling, it will trigger the pressure switch in the heater itself.
Well, Jeff,
So
it's
that's
interesting because that might be why I don't have any of the problems. Just because I had read that very early on when I bought mine. We set ours at like 108, 110. And when we take showers, all we turn on is hot water. We never turn on the cold water. And we haven't run into the problems of running out of hot water.
We are doing that as well. And it didn't seem to make any difference for us. We still had to reset things when we went to take a shower, and then it would work every time after the reset. So
and it's something different. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say our dealer told us about the temperature issue. So you run just hot, and we did that. But this water heater really hates short cycling, turning it on and off, turning the water on or off. So if you can avoid taking having it fire for short cycles, turn it on, use it, shut it off, let it cool, and then use hot water in long spurts. It does tend to work better. But even so, they are problematic.
Does that mean don't do the like army shower method with the new hot water heater?
You can, you can turn it on, hose down, shut it off, and make sure it's a positive off. The handle with the Basecamp that we had dribbles, so we replaced that for one that had a positive stop, and then you soap up and do your thing, and then when you go back to use it again, you'll get a little bit of cold, but you'll have warm water in the pipes, short burst of cold, and then it'll heat again. After you use it a while, you get kind of used to it, but it's not. If I had a tank type water heater back again, I'd be happier. But we've learned to deal with this one.
Okay.
And it looks like Steve put in the comments that they don't even have power to the control, that the dealers have to replace the board on his. Yeah, unfortunately, it's Jeff, it's a problem, it seems, across the board. And whereas my solution seems to work for me, in Tim's case, it doesn't. And then hopefully it's something that they can get fixed. I have seen this discussion on some of the other channels that I've watched on YouTube, where people have installed other brands of tankless water heaters, and some have had good success and some haven't. So I've seen some folks switch from regular tank heaters and others switching back over to the tankless and vice versa. So it'd be great if they would just find an answer for it.
While we're on this subject, I wanted to address the freeze protection that where you either have to pull the fuse or turn off the disconnect to keep it from running when you're not with the trailer. We put a disconnect switch right on the wall next to the propane detector, and that way we can shut it off without digging around and pulling fuses.
Now, how did you access that wire, Scott?
Oh, the wiring diagram on top of the water heater in French shows a disconnect, and that's where I used my high school French So anyway, it shows a disconnect switch, which Airstream for some reason didn't put in there. It's a little red wire in the bundle that goes to the over to the water heater, and I just snipped it and put a switch on it.
Interesting. Yeah, come see, come saw is about all I remember from high school French.
That's actually very useful information. I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah. All right. What other questions?
Sorry, I have a very tiny guest with me. So we're picking ours up in just a couple of weeks, but we're picking it up like 6 hours away. So we don't have a lot of time to we can't pick it up and then bring it back the next day if something's wrong. And I'm just wondering, what are the biggest things that we need to be looking for in our inspection so that we make sure that we're not angry when we bring it home?
We should get lots of responses on this one.
Well, we live 3 hours away from the dealer. We just brought a long list and we spent a lot of time, and we got there at 8 when they opened and spent 3 hours looking everything over, and we still missed a few things. So just take your time and organize it with a list. And I haven't taken it in for service. It's easier just to fix stuff than to drive 3 hours each way.
Yeah, if you could stay somewhere camp a couple of nights close to the dealer, just so you can kind of shake out, that would be ideal if you could do it.
Yeah,
That's absolutely right. Another huge thing with us, everybody told us to do this and we did, and we're so thankful. Have somebody videotape it on your cell phone or whatever, because we go back to that all the time. There's too much to remember. And even with all the books you get and everything else, you can go back and, he literally showed us everything. Our walkthrough was 3 hours, but we went through.
Wow.
I know. And we videotaped it and everything. And that was massively helpful.
That's really good advice.
Our dealer let us stay over in the parking lot overnight. And that was extremely helpful. We tried everything out, but then the very last thing we did was one of us took a shower. This was before we were leaving the next day, and that's when we found the shower leak under the shower floor. And then the nice service people at Colonial were laying on our floor for another 2 hours, trying to locate this
trying
leak.
to reproduce it.
We couldn't reproduce the dang leak, but it was all noted. But the sleepover was very, very helpful because I sent a list first to our dealer. There was an Excel spreadsheet floating around in one of the groups of common issues, and I sent that ahead of time to my salesperson, and they went through that with the service people. And then when we got there for our walkthrough, we went over that list as well as their standard list, and we're pretty versed RV campers already, so we had a base of experience. So they tailored their walkthrough to our level of experience, but we still went through all of those possible problem areas, and then even more so after our sleepover. But if you can do that, if they have room in their parking lot or a nearby campground, it's just so helpful before you get 6 hours away, because we're several hours from our dealer as well.
I would
That's
assume
really
that
smart. We have to figure out our kid situation. So I have to decide if I want to pay my nanny for one more night or if I want to bring them with us.
We had a
I would
sitter.
assume that you're gonna. Yeah, I would get the sitter. Yeah, I would assume that there's going to be something that they can't fix while you're waiting. I think the normal operational stuff was easy for me. What I found really frustrating was a lot of the little trim pieces were not quite right. And, we had a black tank leak that I fixed, and it turned out to be something very simple, but these are things that they didn't really check. I found a lot of aluminum shavings in places where you don't want aluminum shavings, like in the electrical box. So these are things that just the fundamental cleaning. I found rivets all over the place. It's just weird stuff that unexpected. And, part of it is the delivery, and part of it is how well the dealer does the prep. So
What year did you get it?
This year.
Huh. I had hoped their quality control was improving.
Yeah, I was not very happy. You know, most of this stuff I ended up fixing because I didn't want to spend the time to bring it back.
I was going to say,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Because I'm a first time camper owner of any kind, trailer, anything, and I don't know all this kind of stuff about, you know, even home repairs or anything. I hired a RV inspector to inspect mine. And before I hired him, I had lots of issues with my dealership not telling me anything and not communicating. So I was very worried. And my walkthrough lasted about 30 minutes with an 18-year-old. And of course, I had no idea what I was even supposed to ask about at that point because I hadn't even found your groups and stuff like that. So it was the best money I ever spent. And I'm going to knock on plastic wood or some kind of wood around here. I've not had a thing yet go wrong with it. And I know they were a little bit nervous about me hiring somebody to come in. And I called them, you know, and set the date and everything. And then they called me back and said, oh, no, he can't come then. He can come in a week or two. And he was like, I already have it on my list. She's going to lose her money. He called her up. And if you don't let me come that day, you know, blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, when he got there, his whole report was like 20 pages long. And he found like 2 things because I think it made them do the prep work ahead of time better than they would have had I not done that. Does that make sense? So I felt like for me,
that's super smart.
Was the best because I just sold my mother's house and I just bought a new house, sold my house, and I had home inspectors on all of that. And I thought, if you're going to do it for a house, why not do it for the camper too? So that's what I did. And I felt like I got my money's worth out of it because I'm so inexperienced. I didn't know what to ask, like you might have known what to ask.
Yeah, it's good feedback. And Sherry, did you, was your dealer in South Carolina?
Say that again?
Was your dealer John's RV in South Carolina?
No, it was not. I had gone there once and decided not to use them. And then I went to Greensboro. Okay. Worst decision I ever made. I've dealt with John's RV now a few times, like when I got my weight distribution hitch, and they've been very, very helpful, but they've just been bought out too by RV Superstore. So plan on them going downhill.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's at least one of those spreadsheet checklists that's attached, I think, to the Basecamp group on Facebook as a file. So you might want to look there for lists.
Awesome. I'll look for that. Thank you.
And I would familiarize yourself with the Basecamp, but there's so many great videos. Wayne's done some really wonderful ones, and there's lots of walkthrough videos. So, I mean, if you know what to expect, then anything that's not like that, you know, you can flag immediately, as opposed to saying, hey, that doesn't, you know, it doesn't feel right, but you'll know. So that's where it's worth taking the time or hiring somebody. I think that's a really brilliant idea to hire an inspector.
Yeah, I think that was good advice. And I just pulled up on the screen. Here's an example of a checklist. And this is in the regular Airstream Basecamp group.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you for showing me that.
Yep. So just
I
go over
also
to
think that you can go on the Airstream site. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they have the manuals for the base camps. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you look through the manual, you could see, oh, well, that's interesting. I might want to check that off or highlight it. You can print it out. It's not huge, and you should get one when you get your trailer. But I was looking at the manual before I got it, but that's just because my dad had a manual for everything. and now they come with nothing. So, so I did go on there and check some things out. And, you know, like I said, you will continually have questions. That's why I think these groups that we have are awesome, because everybody here helps more than anything. I got one of those moonshades for my base camp, and I thought that was going to be so difficult, and it was so simple. I don't know why I didn't get one before, because we've had it for a year, and I love our moonshade.
That's so funny, because that's a question my husband was like, ask everybody what awning they like to use. And he was like, had concerns about the moonshade because it goes like this toward the roof, but it's great to hear that you like it.
Yeah, I think there's several people on here and on the 20X that have theirs, and you can do it where it comes 9 feet out or 7 feet out, whichever way you turn it. And I do love it. I'm not short, but I'm not extremely tall either. And I was able to navigate it by myself. So I do love it. And it just, we had a little bit of rain. We were camping in Pismo RV park, and we had some drizzle and rain, and it was just perfect.
Yeah, just second that. I like the moonshade a lot. The poles do actually extend. I notice a lot of people don't extend them.
Yes.
So if you extend them up, the moonshade is like parallel with the roof.
And I
But
just got the shit.
I think if a lot of people don't notice, they can do that. So. Yeah.
And yesterday in the mail, my sides, because I purchased the sides. I'll see what those are like, and I'll post a picture of those once I put them on. I'm not going to be putting them on in the snow, because we won't be in any location that long. But when I do, I'll put some pictures up.
I've used the side once. It worked pretty good. It blocked I used it for blocking sun.
Oh, cool.
I haven't used it for blocking wind yet. I don't know how well it works with that, but it did block the sun well. You know, when the sun was going down, and it was really hot.
Yeah,
it does help with that. So
I think we deal with a lot more sun than anything.
Did y'all get 2 sides or just 1 side?
I just got 1.
I got 3. You know why? Because we have dogs. Well, we have 1 dog now, soon to have 4. And you know, depending upon where we are, you never know where the sun's going to be, if we're going to need it on several different angles, because we do have so much sun in California.
It's super easy.
Yeah, and it's just
True
so
that.
easy to put up, really easy. It's a great design.
Easy tear down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like
when you
Jonathan has
meet with your, when you meet with your dealer, make sure you have your dealer walkthrough person actually use all of the things, like before you do. Have him make sure there's water in the tank, and have him use all of the valves, including the winterizing valve, and not just look at it, but actually do all of the things. Yes, do all of the testing with you, because we found one issue with ours, that the actual winterizing valve, like they looked at it and inspected it and said, nope, that's on right. But when we got it home, the actual valve was manufactured backwards. Like the writing was backwards on the valve.
The arrow pointed the
yeah,
right way,
yes.
but the workings were not.
Right. And we would have found that during our walkthrough had he actually tried to do the winterizing. You don't have to complete it, but just make sure all the valves go in the right places. And they can do that for you. Just make sure you have them do that before you leave.
I think someone just posted that they got a base camp with no batteries in it. I mean, like, so probably make sure the electrical works with when it's not plugged into shore power, just in case. It seems like that's unlikely, but I'm surprised that got missed.
Well, no, and I think the new ones come without batteries. They're pre-wired.
We had to pick which batteries. They were like, which batteries do you want? And I was like, doesn't it come with them? And they were like, nope, which batteries do you want?
But that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to ask you, though, and then you're supposed to choose. So I think this person, they just literally gave him one without batteries, and he didn't, they just
like, what were they like, what was the dealership thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. He said they made it right. They fixed it, but yeah.
Yeah, and like Heidi, they showed me the winterization valve, and I did the John's RV that I was asking Sherry about in South Carolina. He's like, oh, this is your winterization. I looked at it, saw where to turn, went home. It would not work. I cut mine out and found the manufacturing flaw. The valve itself was manufactured backwards. So bought one on Amazon, installed it, took a little while, big hands, hard to get into a small space. But yeah, make them should make everything work. It's kind of like when you get a car and you get a sunroof and you just assume that it's going to work. Open the sunroof, right? Everything you're going to touch.
It is nice to be handy. I mean, I got mine and because of COVID, there was all these lockdowns and it took a long time to get in the dealer. So I ended up fixing a whole lot of stuff myself because I just didn't feel like waiting for months to get it fixed. Which is unfortunate, but most of the things were easy to fix that I was able to, get parts on Amazon for pretty cheap and it was a good, I actually enjoyed the learning experience.
That's awesome. My husband is pretty handy, so he would be doing any and all of that stuff should we need.
Yeah. It pays to be handy when you have an RV. I think it doesn't matter what brand you have. It's like a boat, right? You're going to have to fix things.
There is a RV training center in Athens, Texas, where they take and teach you how to take care of your RV, all the electrical, plumbing, and all that stuff for users like me. And I had signed up to do that before all the moving and everything. I was going to go over spring break from school before I picked up the trailer. But do y'all guys think that that would be something that would benefit me if I went back to, because Athens is a place where I have people that I know and live. It's like 12 miles from where my mother and daddy grew up. So there's this thing, I can't remember what the name of it is.
RVTA.
Yeah, that's it. Do you think that would be something that would benefit me as a newbie to go to something like that for a week and do that?
Personally, I've watched your exploits on Facebook. I think you've got it. You've learned everything there is to learn the hard way, and you've come to this, and you've come to this group, and probably I think you would learn a bunch of the same stuff that you've got here. So, you're doing great.
Well, I bought all that equipment they had told me I had to have for it, and then I had to cancel out. So I've got all these things I don't know what to do with, like electrical meters and things like that, that I guess if I played around with them, I could figure out how to use them or something. And they had me buy tons of tape and tons of wire and all this kind of stuff that I keep carrying around everywhere, just in case.
Yeah, so
there's a wealth of videos on YouTube for anything that could go wrong in any RV, from how to use a voltmeter to any possible problem. I mean, YouTube's a great resource. I mean, I think you'd get more out of that in a way than putting a lot of effort into a class. It's just my opinion.
It's the teacher in me. Can you tell?
Well, some of us are nerds and we love to learn via YouTube and are too cantankerous to go to a class. If you learn best from going to a class, that'll work for you. So yeah.
So Sherry, I don't think too many people on here have put in full hookups at their house like you have.
And did y'all see my new light I put outside?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. Full hookups at your house sounds amazing. That's something I want to do.
$9 a month to have that light on my base camp. That's not bad.
That's amazing.
That's good. So Sherry, I agree with the others that from where you are, you're good. Now, understanding my wife's a teacher, you're a teacher. If you want to go do that, you could, or you can do uncurated YouTube, just search for everything. If you wanted a curated, easy to start course, E3 camping. I don't know what their price is today. That is the folks that do the videos is Mark and Trish from Keep Your Daydreams YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah.
They go in and it's how to hook up sewer, how to hook up power, how do you get water, where do you park, how do you level your camper, all of that. They have videos for all those basic things in there. And that would be cheaper than going to the Todd's NRVTA Academy. I've debated going to the Academy just to go in to see how to get to the next levels and things I'd like to do. Like I'd like to be able to take the furnace apart if I had to and fix something. I'm handy to a point. Electrical was easier because I worked for a telephone company and we had battery banks that would run a data center for a day, right? So I was used to dealing with power inside of a data center and DC power at 48 volts, right, and on up. But fixing the hot water heater, not as much. I'll figure it out. Now that, Scott's mentioned how he put that little switch in, I may go do that this next coming weekend. I think you're good for what you've done. If it makes you feel comfortable, go for it. But you've got each of the different levels of options if you wanted to.
Okay. I've watched all of Trish and Mark's videos. I did that, you know, a long time back and stuff, just sitting up at night watching video after video. But I think actually doing things and then going back and doing it again and watching them helps too, because I didn't know what I was talking about when I was watching them the first time around. Do you know what I mean?
And the other option is if you join one of the local RV clubs, the Airstream Club or one of the others, and just go someplace on the weekend where there's a couple of others, everybody's going to jump in like this call and say, what's this? They'll show you how to do it.
Yeah, I've done one rally with the Airstream Club that was up between the North and South Carolina one. They were really good with me.
Good.
And stuff and things like that. I just hadn't had a chance to go to the next one because it was down in Myrtle Beach, and that's just too far for me with working you know, Friday and having to be back on Monday.
Yep.
So, you know.
Well, Sherry, come on out to California. I'll teach you everything I know.
Okay. Well, I am coming. I'm going to the big rally in Wyoming at Rock Springs. Is anybody else going? And I'm going to go to Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and then I'm going to go down to the Arches and Bryce Canyon and Zion. And then I haven't decided what I'm going to do to get back to the Southeast, but if I do the short trip, I'll go back through Lubbock where I have relatives, because, you know, you can't go that far without seeing relatives. And
Now you're making me jealous.
why? You want to come too?
I want to hit all those places.
I was going to say, that sounds like a road trip. I think we all need to go.
Yeah.
If I
We'll
just
meet
do the
at
short version,
Zion.
if I do the long version, it'll be my whole summer. So I hadn't decided which way to go yet. But I was wondering about the dust. Everybody's talked about the dust from, you know, the Southwest getting up in the trailer. Should I seal all that up before I take off? The underneath side?
Not unless you're going to be off-road. I mean, we go to Southwest all the time, and you know, we're not going to we park in the national park campground. You're not going to have any problem unless you're really back on some road going in the middle of nowhere. I wouldn't even worry about the dust. And I'll just throw this out there. Zion is a great destination. Watchman Campground has plugins, and they reserve as far as a year out. And you're not going to just drive in there and get a plug-in campsite at Watchman Campground anytime when you want to be there. So that's going to take a little planning. Arches, there's a lot of places nearby. You know, all those other places, you can work something out. But Zion, no, you better have a plan.
I do. And I looked at Zion the other day, yesterday or day before, and they haven't opened them up for this summer yet. So,
okay.
And they open them up 6 months ahead, but there's like, if somebody wanted like, say June 1st, and they took June 1st through June 14th, then when you open it up for your June 14th trip or your June 10th trip, then you're not going to get it, you know, as easily. So there's that kind of trouble when you start to do it, is somebody's booked out and then they're all taken, you know. So I may try to look earlier.
That's a big subject. We live by Yosemite, and however bad Zion is, Yosemite is times 10. And you just got to fight the battle, and you got to do it a few times, and it's still hard. I mean, there's no guarantees. It's tough.
Yeah.
There's places. Okay. Also, Gooseberry Mesa, which is 10 miles south, let's say, of Zion. It's at large camping, BLM, pretty nice, close enough to go driving to Zion every day. No reservations. I mean, there's always that. If you don't want to hassle with trying to get a reservation, and obviously no plugins, you're boondocking. That's a nice place.
Well, I figured I'd have some boondocking because of those situations, but then I'd be having others where I'm somewhere I can get everything charged back up and dumped. So, you know, a little of either will be okay.
Yeah, you just wish you had Wayne's 24-volt system.
Oh, he's going to loan it to me. He's going to put it in my.
She's not far down the road from me, so
yeah,
probably about 2 hours away.
Yeah.
Maybe help you install one.
Oh, Lord help us. Y'all are the best people, and I love listening to you because I do learn when I listen. So thank y'all. And my neighbor next door, David, has his whole house on batteries, on solar. And he's got all these lithium batteries in his work areas that he runs off of stuff, and he knows way more than I know. And he asked me questions. I have no idea what he's talking about. So, yeah. But he runs about 10% power from the power company a day on his house.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
He's got
especially
that.
especially in South Carolina, because we don't get as much sun as you do out west.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
he's doing pretty good. Yeah. And I hope to have a wind farm pretty soon too out in West Texas. As soon as my uncle,
Nice.
as soon as
Very
my
nice.
uncle and I get the property, because he still thinks farming cotton on it is the best thing. I think a wind farm would be better. So.
Awesome. All right, other questions?
I had a question. I wondered if anybody had installed an accumulator tank post to keep the water pressure up and keep the pump from cycling.
Yes, I really didn't install a tank. I had done this on an earlier camper. I made an assortment of, I made use PVC and pressure fittings to make something that fit the space I had. You have to be sure that you leave provision to drain it to get any accumulated water out. You also have to be able to disinfect it as part of your routine disinfection, because you don't want like a dead end that grows weird stuff. But I did the same thing with my base camp. I coiled up some 2-inch PVC in the little space at the very rear of the camper, rear of the pump, and it works great. Now, probably what you should do is buy a commercially available tank that has a bladder in it. But yeah, I did that and it works fine.
The other way to go after that is just always turn the water all the way on or all the way off. Don't, have it running slowly so your pump is cycling. We bring our drinking water in separate containers, so you're not turning the faucet on and off every time you want to drink, and you get better water. You don't have to worry about filtering it. So
we found with our previous camper that we were able to really extend our stays because of low water usage. When we could only, when you could only turn it on a little bit to wash your hands, you didn't need to let it run full. And to combine savings, we could extend our fresh water tank. So that was why I added the accumulator on our previous camper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That doesn't work well with this hot water heater, as we've kicked around before. But for the cold water, it still holds true.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I got to go to school, so I got to be up in the morning at 5:30. So I'm going to let y'all go. Thank you.
It's getting late for you guys on the east.
Yeah, it's 9:20. It's an hour past my bedtime.
It's just dinner time here, so I'm going to go and have dinner.
Okay,
It's been
thanks.
great talking with everyone. Thanks seeing you all. Nice meeting everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so can I ask any last questions before we finish up? Well, thanks for everybody joining. It's been great seeing everybody. Hopefully this is helpful.
Great.
And
Hope
thanks
to
for
see you all on the
feedback.
road sometime.
Thank you, Wayne. This is very
Thank you,
productive,
Wayne.
actually.
That's
Glad
great.
to
Thanks,
help.
everyone.
Everybody have a good holiday.
Yeah, thanks for organizing, Wayne.
Too.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Bye.